A big thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this week's video. If you need a website or a domain, go to squarespace.com/James for 10% off your first purchase.
Well, buenos dias, everybody, and welcome to Patagonia. Am I in focus? Basically, Nigel, Mass, Jeroen, Rick, Rhiannon, and Adam Gibbs, we're all here for a few days, having got off the ship from Antarctica. It's the right part of the world, we thought we might as well. And today, what I thought I'd do is talk a little bit about handheld photography, because on the ship in Antarctica we had to do lots of hand holding, and there were lots of landscape photographers who weren't necessarily all that well versed or well practiced in hand holding a camera. So I thought perhaps that spreads across the internet as a theme. Maybe not, but I thought I'd give some tips on how I hand hold. Also, it's going to be lovely here this morning, unless I've just jinxed it.
I am out of focus there. I don't know why, but at least the mountains are in focus in this shot. They're nicer to look at anyway.
Oh, this could be good. Sky's getting pink, so I'll hurry up with this. Tip number one, when we're shooting handheld, is appreciating the wind conditions, because I think wind is the biggest adversary we have as handheld photographers. And when it is windy, the first thing I'd do is scrap any lens hoods, particularly if you're using longer lenses with bigger hoods, because basically they act as massive parachutes. And personally speaking, I'd prefer to deal with flare than unsharp photos or very noisy photos, because you've had to raise the shutter speed so much to get a sharp shot. So yeah, tip number one, get rid of your lens hoods. I mean, mostly if it's windy, and they can serve a purpose. I never use them, but lots of people do like using them. Look at this. Tip number two, spread your weight, particularly again if it's windy. But you need to do so in both directions. So it's all well and good being stable like this, like this, but what you also want is stability front to back. And so I find that having your legs spread apart both forward and sideways helps make me as stable as I can possibly be. Also, you want to make sure that your head, the heaviest part of your body, I don't know, we need a doctor, but your head's heavy, and you need to make sure that your head sits in the middle of your feet. So something like this works pretty well as a stable base, I find. Tip number three, keep your elbows close to your body. You basically want the camera to have as close a connection to you as possible. And if your elbows are out here, the camera's not going to be as stable. So keep your elbows in, camera tucked up against your eye. And I press quite firmly to make sure that the camera is really, really solid up against my face. I appreciate that I'm not doing the leg thing right now, but I'm stood on these steps, so that, I don't know that that's as stable. Kind of complicates things, but yeah, elbows close to your body. Tip number four, if you feel more stable, perhaps on a windy day, and it doesn't hurt your composition, sit down. I always pretty much feel more stable when I'm sat down like this than when I'm stood up, because I can rest my elbows against my legs, and that just gives me something else as a point of contact. And so yeah, I always find I can shoot a stop or two further handheld when I sit down versus when I stand up, particularly in wind. And I say a stop or two further, I mean a stop or two slower in terms of shutter speed. Yeah, I don't know if the sunrise is going to happen. I mean, it's very me, but I'm quite enjoying this road sign and the way that from here at least it points towards the big peaks. It was especially good a couple of minutes back when a car rolled by and kicked up a load of dust on the road, provided some atmosphere, looked like mist. Anyway, next thing I do when I'm trying to take sharp photos, which is all the time, I breathe out when I press the shutter. So I'll wait until I need to exhale, and then I'll do it. It's not a very good example. I'll exaggerate the exhale. I mean, you know what an exhale is. And I just find I'm more stable when I do that. More dust. Found another one, but not as good. And I'm about to get run over. Shutter speed. I know that with my 24-70 or any lens that's kind of normal in focal length, I can be shooting at, let's say, 1/4 of a second handheld with no problem at all, because this body has 8 stops of stabilization. However, when I'm shooting at 1/4 of a second, I'm always checking to make sure that I'm getting sharp shots, particularly when it's windy, because even if I'm confident I can keep the camera steady, I'm definitely not confident that there's not going to be trees and grasses and whatever else in the frame moving. So if I'm shooting at the limits of what I think is possible handheld, I make sure constantly that what I'm getting is sharp, and if not, I just raise the shutter speed. Basically, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm not trying to do anything clever with shutter speed to get movement or anything like that, what I want from my shutter speed is to be as slow as possible while guaranteeing a sharp shot. And sometimes that is 1/4 of a second, sometimes it's 1/30th of a second, sometimes it's 500th of a second. But I want to make sure that I can gather as much light as possible while getting the result that I'm after, because it keeps the ISO low. Yeah, and here is a car. Well, this is kind of a nice spot, but like a few places we've been so far, there's just a generator in the background, so kind of ruins the peace. Did you get a shot?
Yeah, I think so. There's some nice light on the mountain.
Yeah.
It's epic, this place.
And peaceful, I was just saying.
Yeah, there's no noise at all.
Minimum shutter speed is something that I forgot to talk about, but is crucial to the way that I like to work. And basically, it does exactly what it says on the tin. You select a minimum shutter speed that you want your camera to adhere to, and providing that you're in auto ISO, it will do its very best to do that. Now, I say it'll do its best. Basically, in auto ISO, normally you set a lower and upper limit, and providing your camera's not at the upper limit, it will try and make sure that you're shooting at no less than your minimum shutter speed. And I find it a fantastic setting to use, because if all of a sudden you get more light, your camera automatically adjusts, brings down the ISO or raises the shutter speed without you having to worry about doing it yourself. And what that means is that you can spend more time looking at your scene, trying to work out what you want to take photos of, rather than looking down at your camera, adjusting settings, which is crucial when stuff is moving fast around you. And for what it's worth, no idea if you can see that, but I've got C4 set up on my camera to adjust minimum shutter speed, custom for. The other custom buttons are taken with other stuff. Anyway, thank you for watching. I really enjoyed my time in Patagonia, but true to form, it was the human stuff and the integration of the human stuff with those incredible mountains that I enjoyed shooting most. I mean, that's always the case for me, but I do find it interesting that even in incredible national parks like that, it's the human stuff that I'm seeking out. And horses, in this case. I had a lot of fun shooting the horses. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for watching, and thank you also to the sponsor of this week's video, Squarespace. And this morning, I spent a bit of time updating my portfolio. I hadn't added any photos to my portfolio from this year yet, so I was adding shots from New York, which was like 2 months ago, maybe more. But it's a very, very simple process. It's all drag and drop, and essentially making a portfolio that looks exactly how you want it to look couldn't be simpler with Squarespace. And I think all photographers should have a portfolio website that they control entirely. And with Squarespace, there are so many templates to choose from that is super simple. Also, I've just put my new print on my website. If you don't know, basically at the moment I'm selling one print at a time for about a month, and then I will never sell that print, this print in this case, ever again. So it's super simple, again, to do that on a Squarespace website. And so if you want your own online store to sell prints or calendars, books, whatever it might be, I couldn't recommend Squarespace enough. And yeah, in short, I just think it's the perfect tool for photographers. So if you would like to check out Squarespace, just go to squarespace.com to start a free trial. And after that, if you'd like to make a purchase, go to squarespace.com/James to get 10% off that first purchase. And a big thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week. From memory, I get attacked by a lot of mosquitoes in the next video, so that's fun.